Shalom, Kol Halal, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Bahashem HaKakodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of GMS, including the elders that came before them, that taught us his truth. And Shalom and salutations to all the brothers that push the word of truth and in sincerity, the hopeful elect, Tabernacle of David, to the Aquath that are listening and learning, being a pillar of rest, the 144,000, the 1/3, the hopeful elect of Israel, and the brother Yahshua. I'm back with the World War III Daily Update. I'm going to start with Joel 3 and 2. I'll just read 1. Yes, in those days and at that time, which is right now, when I restore Judah and Jerusalem from captivity, I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? So, the valley of Jehoshaphat is talking about the Middle East. I will gather all nations, right? It's talking about the fighting forces of all nations. In the NLT it reads, I will gather the armies of the world into the Middle East. Okay? There I will judge them for harming my people, my special possession, for scattering my people among the nations, and for dividing up my land. So we're watching this go down right now. They're being gathered. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. This is today's CBS News 1 hour ago. How U.S. could respond to deadly drone attack on American military base in Jordan. Okay, so, and for those that say, oh, all you did was play what CBS, yeah, I played that, but what did I do first? I showed you what's going on. This is the prophecy. We see it coming. Okay, we see it happening now. All right, so take it away, CBS News.
President Biden is vowing to respond after a drone strike killed 3 U.S. service members and injured dozens more in Jordan over the weekend. This is the first deadly strike on the Israel-Hamas war. National Security Council coordinator about keeping U.S. troops safe.
We need to continue to make sure that we have, first and foremost, the force posture in place in the region, the military capabilities to defend our troops and our facilities, and to make it clear that these attacks are not acceptable. The president has added force capability to the Middle East.
So the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is gathering the armies of the world into the Middle East, and we're watching it.
I don't have any force posture changes to announce today, but I can assure you that he'll make the decisions as Commander-in-Chief as appropriate to make sure we can continue to defend ourselves. We're not looking for a war with Iran. We're not looking for a conflict broader in the region. We're doing everything we can to try to take the tensions down. We will make the right decisions, the appropriate decisions to defend ourselves, our troops, and our facilities.
For more on this, let's bring in Christopher Miller. He's the former acting Secretary of Defense and a former Army Green Beret. Christopher, what's your reaction to what Admiral Kirby had to say?
Glad, Anne-Marie, thanks for having me on. First off, heartbroken for the families that experienced this loss over the weekend. Also outraged, kind of outraged by Admiral Kirby's statement, to tell you the truth, because this was all predictable and preventable, and I felt his response is reactive. We knew, anybody that's watched the war in Ukraine knows that the drone wars have started, and our troops out there didn't have the capability they needed to protect themselves.
So, President Biden says that an Iran-backed militia is responsible for this. Of course, there's this delicate balance, right? The U.S. needs to respond, but everyone involved is concerned about this conflict exploding, igniting. How far should Washington be willing to go?
Anne-Marie, great question. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the usual U.S. playbook. We'll bomb targets and shoot missiles at targets that Iranian militants had occupied. They've already been notified. People on the ground that I know say they've already left those locations. Really, the axis of all this, as we know, is Iran. There's this thought that if we attack them, that somehow that's going to start World War III. I think with a totalitarian government like the regime, there are tools that you can use, irregular warfare, to use psychological warfare against them. And the thing they fear most is destabilizing their population. And we should accelerate that and support those in Iran that want freedom.
That's really interesting because what you were describing is what the U.S. has been doing all along, and it doesn't seem to have served as a deterrent. Not Iran, but these sort of continuing strikes on militia targets. And so the next level is to take a closer look at Iran, is what you're saying.
I think at the end of the day, that's where I don't think I actually know. At the end of the day, having spent 4 years, well, more than that, 27 years in government, Iran is with their proxies. We see it in the Red Sea right now with the Houthis. Iran has to be dealt with. There's this thought that by advancing against them aggressively, that somehow that will trigger an outrageous response. That's not going to happen.
Why do you say that's not going to happen?
Because we can use tools. We're using the wrong tools right now. We're using old school tools of the last war. We need to start thinking about how the current operating environment is and what they fear most, which is internal instability.
So the question, of course, to your point about what next steps the United States should consider, it does feel as over the course of the last several years, not just during the Biden administration, even going back to the Obama administration, that Iran and its proxies have seen that it is not too difficult to use its proxies to muddle up U.S. interests in the region. And in this case, actually killing U.S. service members through the use of its proxies. And that the response has been muted, to say the least. Yes, there were attacks that took out some of their top commanders, but the question now becomes, can the United States conduct, for example, a raid on or an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities or nuclear capabilities without seeing this explode into a wider war? The question, I think that's what a lot of analysts and our military leaders are grappling with. What is the level of response that the United States should undertake without this going into something that is a wider war that engulfs sort of everybody?
Thanks, Vlad. It's simple. Everything you learned about foreign policy, you learned on the junior high playground. Iranian regime and the Ayatollah are bullies. Only thing they respond to is force. We killed their senior general, Qasem Soleimani. Many people thought that was going to create a conflagration and regional war. It did. Other than an attack that we knew was coming, there was not any major response. I actually think it plays into their narrative when we go with heavy weapons and we attack them that way. I think there are other tools to use that they're much more fearful of. Think about information, freeing information. The Iranian people are ready to be freed from the Ayatollah. Those are the types of things that I'm advocating, Vlad.
Yeah, Chris, this is stretching my memory because I was a kid, but I didn't learn about it in college in history class. President Reagan striking the Iranian Navy back in the 1980s. But what I don't recall is what the consequences of that, if any, were after that action.
Outraged by the Iranian regime and called us the great Satan, which they still use that language. And I think that's getting a little long in the tooth. And I think the young people in Iran, most of them weren't around for the 79 revolution, and they're ready for a change. So I think we just need to support those folks and those groups that are in Iran that are looking for a new way forward that doesn't involve the tyranny of the Ayatollah and his regime.
All right, Christopher Miller, a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Maybe Babylon the Great should mind their own business, but they're not. They want northern Iran and southern Iran, and to park their vehicles in southern Iran. This is what they did. So much like they did in Iraq. So anyway, there you have it. Is it going to escalate? Let's see. It's Revelation 11 and 14. See what the Bible says. We can read it in the Berean Standard. Revelation 11 and 14. The second woe has passed. World War II is over. Behold, the third woe is coming shortly. So the Bible says it's going to escalate into World War III. With that, we hope that the elect are edified. Your brothers and few sisters, with that, I'm going to say shalom.